Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'll be your host, Nick Axslav Ranish, and today we've got a special double header of Rules of Engagement coming at you guys. First, we're going to analyze the Partying versus Fantasy set, and then we're going to analyze the RoE versus Hero set. On Rules of Engagement, what we're doing from now until the Winter Championships is we're going to be analyzing the, I'm going to be analyzing, the match that happened today prior to this on your Winter Championship Showdown qualifier match. So, for example, if you were on this stream just a few minutes ago, you witnessed the amazing series between Innovation and TY. Tomorrow, that will be analyzed on Rules of Engagement. But today, Partying vs. Fantasy is the first one where this is going to be coming up. Let's talk about a couple things we've got set up. First, we're going to look at the Game 1 on Entombed Valley, then the Game 2 on Ohana, then the Game 3 on Cloud Kingdom. And then we might hold off to Q&A until after the next segment of RoE versus Hero. We'll see how much time allows us to do. But for now, jumping into game number 1 on Entombed Valley, a couple things to go over on this game that I thought were particularly interesting. One is the one base Void Ray build order that Partying used. If you thought that was an amazing build, you want to use it at home, we'll go over a few of the details that are very important when you're executing this build. Or when you're doing the build, or the build order itself. Then we're going to talk about important things when you're trying to execute it to focus on, and then of course, if you're a Terran player on the losing side of this quite often, some tips on how to defend this one base Void Ray attack. So let's jump right into the game now. And we're going to start off early in the game from Partying's point of view on how the important things about doing this build. So one of the most important things is our gas timing. We're doing any of these type of tech one base builds. Get your second gas right after you start that cycle. So you want to get it before you build a single gateway unit. Notice the gateway is idle, nothing being built in that gateway. Get that second gas first as soon as possible because you really need a lot of gas to do any type of these builds. Then what you do next is you want to get a stalker out. As soon as this Cybernetics core finishes, you crank out your stalker and you chrono boost it. And the reason why you chrono boost it is to get the SCV out of your base as soon as possible, because as soon as you kick that SCV out of your base, you want to be able to go ahead and throw down that Stargate, because you do not want that scouted. Got to get that stalker out, make sure an SCV can't get in your base, then you throw down that Stargate right there. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure you have like a halfway decent proxy pylon. You're going to try to get a closer one as time allows, and you're going to need to make sure that after you start your first Void Ray, right, you want to make sure you have enough money to start that Void Ray, and then you get additional 2 gateways. You're going to start moving out across the map. And then one thing is what you want to do is you want to, as you practice this build, as like every build, if it's a timing build, you want to take a note at how effective you're doing at the timing. So if you get to the point where Partying launches his attack, you can use him as a guideline. And let's get right here. He's attacking. The bullets start being fired at 7:30. Okay? So at the time that Partying attacks is at 7:30, if you look at his army, we'll take this probe out of that. He's got 3 sentries, 3 stalkers, 3 zealots, and 2 void rays. Okay? And so when you're practicing this build at home, what you want to do is just take a note of the time you're hitting and the amount of units you have. If it's not as good as this, which I mean, you're not Partying, right? So it's probably going to be not as good as he is at macro. What you want to do, or say one point. What you want to do is you always want to keep doing it over again and look at the replay. Say, okay, where did I make the mistake? And was I missing a pylon for a second? Did I queue up one too many probes and slow down my Stargate a little bit? Did I not chrono boost something just like he did? There's all these little things that you can do just to make it a little more efficient, so go ahead and check out that replay. When you're actually attacking, prioritization is Guardian Shield. Make sure that Guardian Shield is up. That's the most important thing in micro. Second most important thing is make sure those Void Rays have their charge beams activated. Heart of the Storm is an activated ability. Does extra damage to armor units. The bunker is very, very, very essential to take down, and you can take down so much faster those activated Void Ray charge beams. After those 2 things are done, you next want to prioritize constantly warping and reinforcements. If you look at Partying's warp gates, every single one of those gateways, if it's up, he's going to warp in units momentarily to make sure that he's constantly producing those units. He's trying to spend his money. And then, of course, after that, you want to do some fancy micro. You can go ahead and do that. And you can see how devastating this build was. Fantasy had no answer to it. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is that build looked kind of ridiculous, right? I mean, he just came in there, hit the Guardian Shield, hit the activated Void Ray beams, and just stomped Fantasy. If you're a Protoss player saying, hey, let me do that build. So what we do is take a couple notes on that. Remember, it's second gas before any gateway units. Stargate as soon as you push that SCV away, and then go with 2 Void Rays and try to get as many gateway units as possible. Of course, always make sure you have at least a Guardian Shield, a couple of Zealots to tank. I mean, when in doubt, if you're trying to figure out what gateway unit composition to make, when in doubt, get equal amounts of everything. I mean, why not, right? There's some situations where you don't want to do that, but in general, if you don't know what to do, just get equal amounts of everything. That way, you're kind of going the middle route. It's always a good option. So, if you're Protoss, you can go ahead, jump on the ladder, start executing that build. It's really, really fun. If you're a Terran player and you're like, well, that's no fair. I don't want to lose to that every single game. Let's take a look at a couple things Fantasy could have done. Let me get this round back to the 3-minute mark. That Fantasy could be doing to make his defense a little bit stronger. So one thing, if you're a Terran player there, it's very important in Wings of Liberty as well as Heart of the Swarm. If you ever see a Protoss player going 2 gases before an expansion or before gateway units, it pretty much implies that there's a strong potential for a 1 base tech timing attack. Okay, it could be something like it might be not tech timing attack, just be some type of tech play off 1 base, right? It could be Stargate, as we saw here. It could also be DT rush, right? It could be like a 3 gateway 1 Robo Immortal bust. It could be a 4 gate Prism, although they might not. They would price look 2 guesses for that. There's a lot of different options it could be. But the bottom line is you've got to be ready for all these type of 1 base tech options. Now, one thing that makes it much easier to defend these options is if you're trying to hold your main base instead of your natural. So I'd advise you, if you see that second gas, go ahead and throw that first command center in your main, or if you scout a little bit late, then you can just move it to your main as soon as it's an orbital command. The reason for that, why it's so powerful, is because it makes you much safer against attacks. Because you're much safer against attacks, you can tech much faster. And then it also allows you to defend harass easier. For example, the Voiders attack the front, right, at the 730 mark. What if, while Fantasy's defending the front, the Voiders come into main, or an Oracle comes into main and wipes out all his SCVs, right? It's much, much harder to defend 2 bases than it is to defend 1. And as a Terran player, you're in the unique situation where you can have a extremely strong economy relative to your opponent on equal bases via using multiple mule drops. So you have the extra orbital in your main, it gives you extra SCV production, gives you the extra mule drop, and you can be a massively ahead in economy without the risk factors of having to try to defend a natural base. So we can see here, if we look at this type of defense, right, what is basically the concave situation of an opponent trying to head up this ramp, right? So if an opponent's trying to focus on this bunker here, they can have units do that basically from an arc this big, right? That's a lot of units attacking that bunker. And how many Terran units can fight back against a Protoss units in that arc? Well, you've got about an arc, something like this, right? Whoops, it's more or less just like, well, we can encompass the bunker there. So it's basically it's fairly similar. You can't actually have that many more units attacking them than they have attacking you. There's not a significant concave advantage. But if, let's say, you're a Terran player, and instead you're trying to defend your main base, right? And you're up here. And now you're in a situation where you've got your bunker not where the barracks is. No, you put your bunker right about right here. Now, if we think about the Protoss units trying to attack that bunker, well, the only Protoss units that can attack it are basically right here, which is very, very much more limited. The Zealots can't get it. The Sentries are out of range. Only 1 or 2 Stalkers can even shoot that bunker, of course, the Void Rays as well. But it allows you to segment out the rest of the army. You can deal with the Void Rays first, the rest of the army later. Of course, you have to sacrifice these 2 depots, but you know what? As a Terran player, I would rather sacrifice 2 depots but still be way ahead because they have 2 bases than lose the game, personally. I think that's a better option. The other thing is, if you're doing this defense because it's so much more efficient, what you can do is, instead of building this 3rd barracks right there, instead of building that barracks, you can build 2 barracks and start going all the way up to factory. Maybe get a Widow Mine to supplement your defense. Maybe start getting those fast medevacs with Ignite Afterburners. And this, because you can defend so much easier, you can tech much faster. And that'll more than compensate for the fact that, yeah, you're going to move down to natural slightly slower. Of course, with that fast tech, it also gives you a lot more scouting options. Like, as soon as you get the medevac out, you can scout. Then you can tell what your opponent's doing. And of course, if they're not one-basing you, that's when you go ahead and take that natural. So this is a really, really powerful powerful one base build, the one base void ray attack. I encourage you guys to use it. If you're tier players, you're dying to one base Protoss builds. Try to just think about defending your main base instead of your natural. You'll see at the very top level, a lot of pros are able to defend their natural from these types of attacks, but it's a much more difficult choice, and to be honest, it's not really necessary. You can play a great game by just defending that main base, and then having a hidden SCV in the map, you just scout. If at the 7-minute mark they haven't taken their 7-minute mark they haven't taken that natural, you can go ahead and take your own. So that wraps up this segment of Game 1 of Party vs. Fantasy. We'll take a short break and be right back with Game number 2.